The news broke like a lightning bolt across the quiet morning sky of Britain. Phones buzzed, televisions blared, and headlines in bold letters flashed across screens. Prince Harry had made an announcement that no one thought they would ever hear. The man who once defied tradition for love, who left behind centuries of royal duty to follow Meghan Markle into a new world, now declared that he was walking away. Not from the monarchy this time, but from the very marriage that had defined his adult life. The words were simple, but their effect was seismic. I am divorcing Meghan. From the outside, it may have seemed like just another royal scandal, the kind that tabloids feast upon. But this was something different. This was personal, raw, and heartbreaking. It wasn't about pomp and pageantry. It wasn't about crowns or castles. It was about a man who had once been the most eligible bachelor in the world, finally breaking down in front of millions, revealing that the love story he had sacrificed everything for had come to an end. And that's where this story begins. Not with glamour, not with fairy tales, but with the slow unraveling of a dream that had captured the imagination of millions around the globe. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. To understand the weight of this announcement, we need to go back to the beginning. Remember 2016, when Harry and Meghan first stepped into the spotlight as a couple? The world was enchanted. He was the rebellious prince, haunted by the loss of his mother, desperate to carve his own path. She was the ambitious actress, a woman of mixed heritage who was breaking barriers by stepping into one of the oldest and most tradition-bound institutions on earth. Their love seemed like the perfect antidote to the cold, rigid traditions of royal life. It was fiery, modern, daring, and to many, it was inspiring. They were a symbol of hope for a monarchy that desperately needed to feel relevant again. But even fairy tales cast shadows. Behind the carefully curated photos and loving interviews, tensions were brewing. From Meghan's first days as a royal, she clashed with palace traditions, questioning the rules, refusing to bend to centuries-old customs. Harry, long the outsider in his own family, felt torn. On one hand, he understood Meghan's frustration. He had felt it himself his whole life. On the other, he knew how unforgiving the monarchy could be to those who challenged it. Yet he chose love, and in choosing Meghan, he rejected not just royal duty, but the very foundation of his identity. It was a choice that would change everything. Fast forward through the explosive Oprah interview, the public allegations of racism and neglect, and the infamous Megxit announcement, where Harry and Meghan stepped down as senior royals. They said they wanted privacy, a quieter life, but the truth was anything but quiet. They launched projects, signed multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify, and built a global brand around their names. For some, this was admirable, a couple seizing their independence. For others, it was proof that Meghan had pulled Harry away from his roots, using his name and title to fuel her ambitions. And now, years later, it all seems to have reached its breaking point. But here's the question that keeps the entire nation awake. What really pushed Harry to this decision? Was it years of pressure, the relentless attacks in the media, the slow crumbling of a relationship stretched too thin by distance and expectations? Or was there something deeper, something more personal, that finally drove him to say the words he had avoided for so long? The announcement didn't just shake Britain. It shook the monarchy to its core. Imagine the conversations inside Buckingham Palace when the news hit. King Charles, already burdened with modernizing the monarchy while fighting off controversies of his own, faced another humiliation. Prince William, Harry's once close brother, now rival, likely felt a mix of sorrow and vindication. The institution that Harry had left behind was now forced to deal with the fallout of his personal life, once again dragged into the spotlight by a prince who couldn't seem to escape the pull of public scandal. And what about Meghan? The woman who had stood beside Harry through years of scrutiny, who had endured headlines tearing her apart, who had been both villain and victim in the eyes of the press. What was her reaction? Was she blindsided by this announcement, or had the cracks in their relationship been too obvious to ignore? Was she quietly preparing her own statement, her own truth, that would once again divide public opinion and ignite global debate? These are the questions people whisper about in cafes, in offices, and across kitchen tables. The middle of this story is where the tension grips you. Because this isn't just about a marriage ending. It's about the symbolism of what Harry and Meghan represented. Together, they were supposed to be proof that love could conquer tradition, that a prince could rewrite the rules of monarchy, that a woman who didn't fit the royal mold could still be accepted and celebrated. Their union was a bold statement against centuries of rigidity. But if even they couldn't make it work, what does that say about the monarchy, about love, about the cost of defying an empire built on appearances? This announcement forces us to question everything we thought we knew about Harry. Was he truly in control of his destiny, or was he swept away by emotions, blinded by love, only to realize too late that he had lost himself? The boy who once walked behind his mother's coffin in silence, the man who swore he would never let the media destroy another woman he loved, now stands at a crossroads. And the entire world is watching to see what path he takes next. But perhaps the most powerful part of this story is not the spectacle, but the humanity. Strip away the titles, the palaces, the millions of eyes watching, and what do we see? A man in pain, a husband whose marriage has fallen apart, a father who must now decide what's best for his children. And that's where the true weight of this announcement lies. Not in the headlines, not in the political implications, but in the raw emotion of a man who dared to follow his heart and is now left to pick up the pieces. As the introduction draws to a close, the stage is set for a deeper exploration. We will dive into the journey that brought Harry and Meghan here, the highs and lows, the scandals and triumphs, the betrayals and moments of courage. We will uncover the hidden tensions that built up behind closed doors, the public battles that left scars, and the personal struggles that pushed Harry to this breaking point. By the end, you'll see not just a headline about divorce, but a human story of love, ambition, sacrifice, and the crushing weight of expectation. Because at the heart of this announcement lies a question that haunts not just Harry, but all of us. How much can one person give up for love before they lose themselves entirely? This is the story of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Not the fairy tale, not the headlines, but the truth that lurks in the shadows of royalty. And as we step into this journey, be prepared for twists you never saw coming, heartbreaks that feel all too real, and revelations that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the modern royal family. The story of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle began like something out of a modern fairy tale, the kind of romance that felt destined for the silver screen rather than the pages of real life. It was 2016 when the whispers first started, whispers that soon grew into headlines splashed across every major newspaper in Britain and beyond. The mischievous prince, long known as the wild child of the royal family, had found love with an American actress. But she wasn't just any actress. Meghan was a woman who carried herself with confidence, who had a career, a voice, and a life outside of royalty long before Harry entered the picture. For many, this was the beginning of a love story that would challenge the very foundations of the monarchy. The two met through a mutual friend, introduced in a way that felt almost ordinary. Yet nothing about what followed was ordinary. Harry, the boy who had grown up under the relentless gaze of the world, found something refreshing in Meghan. She was different. She wasn't born into aristocracy, she wasn't tied to centuries of tradition, and she wasn't afraid of speaking her mind. To Harry, who had lived a life defined by duty, restraint, and protocol, Meghan was a breath of fresh air. For Meghan, Harry was the man behind the title, a kind and wounded soul who longed to escape the golden cage he had been born into. Their connection was instant, and within weeks, it was clear that they were moving towards something serious. When the relationship became public, the world's reaction was explosive. Some cheered, thrilled at the idea that the monarchy was finally opening its doors to diversity, to modernity, to love unbound by centuries-old expectations. Others recoiled, quick to criticize Meghan for everything from her career choices to her family background. The press, which had once played a role in Harry's greatest pain with the death of his mother, quickly latched onto Meghan, dissecting her every move, every word, every gesture. Yet in those early days, none of it seemed to matter. What shone through the chaos was Harry's determination to protect Meghan and Meghan's willingness to stand by Harry, no matter the cost. The engagement in 2017 was like a spark igniting a powder keg. With the ring on Meghan's finger and the palace's official approval, The narrative of a modern fairy tale cemented itself in the public imagination. Their engagement interview was filled with laughter, stolen glances, and the kind of tenderness that seemed genuine even in front of millions. Harry spoke of how quickly he knew Meghan was the one. Meghan, radiant and poised, described their quiet proposal over a roast chicken dinner. For a brief moment, the press, the public, and the monarchy seemed united in their fascination and excitement. It was as if Diana's son had finally found his happily ever after, and the world wanted to believe in it. The wedding in May 2018 was the pinnacle of that dream. Windsor Castle became the backdrop for a spectacle watched by nearly 2 billion people worldwide. Meghan, walking down the aisle in her elegant gown, represented something revolutionary. An American woman of mixed-race heritage marrying into one of the oldest, most tradition-bound families in the world. The ceremony blended royal traditions with modern touches that reflected Meghan's background and values. A gospel choir sang with soulful power, an American bishop spoke of love that transcends barriers, and the sight of Harry's tear-filled eyes as Meghan approached him sealed the image of true love in the public's mind. It was a moment of history, a declaration that times were changing. For Harry, that day must have felt like vindication. He had chosen his own path, chosen love on his terms, and the world had stopped to witness it. For Meghan, it was a triumph. A woman who had faced skepticism and hostility now stood as the Duchess of Sussex, embraced by millions who saw her as a symbol of progress. It was not just a wedding, but a statement. Love could win, modernity could coexist with tradition, and the monarchy could evolve. But even as the celebrations continued, shadows loomed on the horizon. Beneath the glamour, whispers of discontent began to swirl. Meghan's family controversies made headlines. Her father, Thomas Markle, gave interviews that cast a shadow over her joy. Her half-siblings publicly attacked her character. The press, which had momentarily softened, sharpened its claws once again. Yet through it all, Harry and Meghan held hands, smiled, and pushed forward with the determination of two people who believed that love alone could shield them from the storm. And for a time, it did. Their first public tours together were triumphs. Crowds cheered as they visited Australia, Fiji, Tonga, and New Zealand. Meghan's speeches were eloquent and empowering, Harry's presence steady and protective. Together, they seemed unstoppable, the golden couple of a new era. Even critics who doubted their union were forced to admit that they had a magnetic presence. Wherever they went, they drew adoration and attention, the kind that royal aides quietly admitted rivaled even William and Kate's. The birth of Archie in 2019 was another milestone, one that carried deep emotional weight. For Harry, it was a chance to rewrite history, to give his child the love and protection he felt had been denied to him when his own mother died. For Meghan, it was proof that she belonged, that her place in the royal family was now cemented not just by title, but by bloodline. The announcement of Archie's arrival was met with joy, but also renewed scrutiny. The couple's decision to keep certain details private, such as the circumstances of the birth, drew criticism from tabloids that accused them of breaking tradition. Once again, the fairy tale glimmered on the surface but was quietly cracking underneath. Yet none of this was visible to the millions who continued to believe in the story of Harry and Meghan. To them, the couple embodied resilience. Every kiss on a balcony, every smile on a tour, every carefully chosen photo on social media told a story of love conquering all. It was intoxicating, the idea that a prince who had walked through fire, through grief and loss, had finally found peace in the arms of a woman who truly understood him. For Meghan, the image was equally powerful. A woman of the world stepping into history, carving her name into a lineage that had once seemed untouchable. This first chapter of their love story set the stage for everything that followed. It created expectations of unity, of strength, of everlasting love that the world clung to. And yet, as with all fairy tales, reality has a way of intruding. The same passion that bound them together would later fuel their conflicts. The same determination to stand apart from the crowd would later isolate them. The very qualities that made them magnetic as a couple would become the seeds of division. But in these early years, none of that mattered. Harry and Meghan were untouchable. They were the couple that defied odds, that silenced critics with a smile, that made even the most cynical believe in the possibility of happily ever after. The fairy tale had begun, and the world was captivated. When the cheers of the wedding day faded and the carriages rolled away from Windsor, the reality of royal life began to set in. For Meghan Markle, the transition was not just about moving into a castle. It was about entering a centuries-old system built on rules, expectations, and traditions that had crushed many before her. For Prince Harry, it was a return to the world he knew all too well: the relentless schedule, the rigid hierarchy, and the suffocating scrutiny. Yet now, he faced it not alone, but with a wife he had sworn to protect. Life behind palace walls promised stability on the surface, but in truth, it was where the seeds of struggle quietly took root. At first, Meghan tried to adapt. She studied royal protocol, learning when to curtsy, how to address senior members of the family, and the nuances of public engagements. She perfected the royal wave, adjusted her wardrobe to meet palace standards, and tried to embrace the role of duchess. But the palace was not a welcoming place. Within those walls, staff members whispered, senior royals watched with suspicion, and every misstep was magnified into scandal. Meghan's American directness clashed with the understated, buttoned-up traditions of the monarchy. She spoke openly, asked questions, and pushed back against customs that seemed outdated. To some, this was refreshing. To others, it was dangerous. The relationship between Meghan and Kate Middleton, the Duchess of Cambridge, quickly became a point of fascination. The press painted a picture of icy distance, stories of tears at bridesmaid dress fittings, and subtle competition for public approval. Whether exaggerated or true, these reports created an undercurrent of tension that Meghan could not escape. Instead of being embraced as a sister-in-law, she often felt compared, measured, and judged. Where Kate represented stability and tradition, Meghan was cast as disruptive and unpredictable. For Harry, who had always felt overshadowed by William and Kate, this only deepened his sense of division within the family. Inside the palace, staff coined unflattering nicknames. Meghan was labeled demanding, even difficult, accused of treating palace aides like employees on a Hollywood set rather than royal servants. Harry bristled at these portrayals, furious that the institution did not defend Meghan the way he believed they should. He remembered how his mother, Diana, had been left vulnerable to the press, and he swore history would not repeat itself. But in defending Meghan so fiercely, Harry found himself at odds with the very family he once called his own. The press became relentless. Daily stories questioned Meghan's motives, dissected her family drama, and painted her as both manipulative and naive. Thomas Markle, Meghan's estranged father, gave interview after interview, criticizing his daughter and airing private details. Half-siblings who had barely been part of Meghan's life suddenly became fixtures in tabloids, casting doubt on her character. Each headline cut deeper, and each silence from the palace made Meghan feel more isolated. In her own words later, she admitted she often felt unprotected. The birth of Archie, which should have been a moment of joy, revealed just how strained life had become. Meghan wanted to do things differently. She sought privacy, choosing not to pose for photographs outside the hospital as Kate had done. She wanted her child shielded from the circus that surrounded them. The palace, steeped in tradition, expected otherwise. The clash led to criticism, with tabloids accusing Meghan of breaking royal norms and denying the public their moment of celebration. What the public saw as rebellion was, in Meghan's eyes, an act of survival. For Harry, it was another reminder that the institution that had promised to protect them was instead fueling the narrative that destroyed their peace. Behind closed doors, the pressure was immense. Meghan spoke of feeling lonely, of being silenced, of being treated as though she didn't belong. There were tears, arguments, and moments of despair that never made it to the front pages. Harry, torn between his loyalty to Meghan and his ties to the family, grew more resentful. The very walls of the palace, once a symbol of heritage and continuity, began to feel like a prison closing in on them both. But perhaps the most striking element of life behind palace walls was the realization that love was not enough. Harry had believed that by marrying Meghan, he could create a new path, one that balanced tradition with modernity. Instead, he discovered that every attempt to innovate was seen as rebellion, every effort to protect Meghan was viewed as defiance. What had started as a fairy tale began to resemble a battleground, where every decision was scrutinized, every smile analyzed, every step criticized. As months turned into years, it became clear that the palace was not going to change for Meghan and Harry. Instead, the expectation was that they would change for the palace. For Meghan, who had built her career on independence and self-expression, this was suffocating. For Harry, who had long dreamed of escaping the rigidity of royal life, it was heartbreaking to realize that even his wife, the woman he thought could help him break free, was being crushed by the same weight that had haunted him since childhood. And so, the tension grew. Behind the glittering facade of royal duties, behind the handshakes and photo ops, a storm was brewing. Meghan and Harry were becoming outsiders within their own family, symbols of both hope and controversy. Every palace dinner, every balcony appearance, every headline only seemed to deepen the divide. The world still saw the perfect couple, radiant and united. But behind the palace walls, cracks were spreading, cracks that would soon grow into fractures too large to hide. Life inside the monarchy was supposed to be Meghan's crowning achievement, a fairy tale continuation of the love story that began in secrecy and exploded onto the world stage. Instead, it became a test of endurance, a struggle for identity, and a countdown to an inevitable breaking point. The palace walls were never meant to be prisons, but for Harry and Meghan, that is exactly what they became. The glow of new love and the excitement of royal duties could only shield Harry and Meghan for so long. Once the dust of the wedding settled, once the novelty of Meghan's presence faded, the realities of the monarchy and the relentless eye of the public began to expose the cracks that were forming not just in their relationship with the institution, but also within their lives as a couple. To many, it seemed sudden, but to those who watched closely, the fissures were visible long before the announcement of their withdrawal from royal duties. These were the cracks in the crown, hairline fractures that threatened not only Harry and Meghan's bond with the monarchy, but also their ability to survive together under its weight. The first signs came with the press. Meghan's treatment in the media was vicious and often racially charged. Headlines contrasted her actions with Kate Middleton's in ways that made Meghan appear brash, selfish, or uncaring. The most trivial matters became ammunition. Meghan touched her baby bump too often. Meghan wore nail polish that was too dark. Meghan closed her own car door. Every normal gesture was framed as a scandal. Kate, by comparison, was praised for doing the very same things. The double standard wasn't subtle, it was glaring. For Meghan, it was demoralizing. For Harry, it was infuriating. He issued public statements condemning the treatment, but instead of quieting the attacks, his anger only seemed to fuel them further. Then there were the whispers about her relationship with other royals. Stories about a rift between Meghan and Kate captured headlines. Some reported that Meghan had made Kate cry during a bridesmaid dress fitting for Princess Charlotte. Others claimed it was the opposite, that Kate had reduced Meghan to tears. The palace offered no clarification, and the truth remained buried beneath speculation. What mattered was not the reality of the event, but the narrative it created. Meghan was difficult, Kate was graceful, and the monarchy was divided. Harry's relationship with his brother, Prince William, also began to show strain. For years, they had been inseparable, bonded by the trauma of losing their mother and the pressures of royal life. But William, ever the steady heir, seemed skeptical of Meghan from the start. Reports suggested he warned Harry not to rush into marriage, advice that Harry took as criticism of Meghan herself. The tension grew, fed by the press and by the lack of open communication between the brothers. Public appearances that once showed them laughing and united now seemed stiff, the warmth replaced by formality. The so-called Fab Four of William, Kate, Harry, and Meghan, once touted as the future of the monarchy, became little more than a fragile mirage. Inside Buckingham Palace, the staff and courtiers had their own doubts. Meghan's directness clashed with the subtle, understated traditions of the institution. She asked questions, challenged decisions, and resisted the notion that she should simply fall in line. To staff accustomed to obedience and quiet efficiency, this was unsettling. Stories of her early morning emails and high expectations became fodder for nicknames like Duchess Difficult. Whether fair or exaggerated, These stories painted a picture of a woman unwilling to bend to palace culture. Harry, protective to a fault, took every criticism as a personal attack, widening the rift between himself and the institution. What made the situation worse was the silence of the monarchy itself. For Harry, the lack of public defense for Meghan was unforgivable. He remembered the way Diana had been left to face the press alone, vilified and cornered, and he saw the same happening to Meghan. He expected his family to shield her, to offer statements of support, to push back against the ugliest narratives. Instead, the silence was deafening. Behind the scenes, courtiers argued that staying quiet was tradition, that dignified silence was the crown's shield. But to Harry, it felt like betrayal. To Meghan, it confirmed what she had feared, that she would never truly be accepted. Meanwhile, Meghan's estranged family added fuel to the fire. Thomas Markle gave endless interviews criticizing his daughter, accusing her of abandoning him. Samantha Markle, her half-sister, published books and made television appearances mocking Meghan's character. These voices, amplified by the tabloids, made Meghan's life unbearable. No matter what she did, the spotlight always found a way to twist her into the villain. The cracks widened, each day bringing new headlines, new rumors, new attacks that chipped away at her sense of belonging. The strain also bled into Meghan's mental health. Later, she would reveal that there were nights when she felt she could not go on, that the pressure, the isolation, and the unrelenting negativity drove her to dark places. Harry, haunted by his mother's fate, felt powerless. The palace, despite knowing the pain she was in, offered little support. Every day behind the gilded gates felt heavier, every smile in front of cameras more forced. The cracks were no longer invisible. They were growing into fractures too deep to ignore. By late 2019, the once glowing image of Harry and Meghan had dimmed. Their public appearances were tinged with tension, their interactions scrutinized for signs of strain. The press spoke openly of feuds within the royal family, of late-night arguments behind closed doors, of Meghan's loneliness and Harry's anger. The narrative of the fairy tale was unraveling, replaced by a darker tale of conflict, mistrust, and alienation. It was during this time that Harry and Meghan began to quietly consider alternatives. They discussed stepping back from royal duties, carving out a new role that would allow them to serve while protecting their family. It was a radical idea, one that shook the crown to its core. But in many ways, it was the only option left. The cracks had grown too wide, and without drastic change, the entire structure of their lives threatened to collapse. This chapter in their story was not yet the breaking point, but it was the moment when the dream began to falter. It was when the reality of royal life clashed with the hopes they had carried into their marriage. The fairy tale glow of the wedding had faded, and in its place stood two people fighting not just for their marriage, but for their survival inside a system that seemed determined to crush them. The cracks in the crown were undeniable now, and it was only a matter of time before they split the monarchy, the media, and Harry and Meghan themselves wide open. By the end of 2019, the tension that had been building within palace walls could no longer be contained. What had started as whispers of division had now turned into a full-scale crisis, one that threatened not only Harry and Meghan's future, but also the stability of the monarchy itself. For the couple, the unrelenting press scrutiny, the coldness from within the institution, and the lack of support from family members had reached unbearable levels. And so, they made a decision that would shock the world, divide opinion, and forever change the trajectory of the British royal family. This was the birth of what the media would dub Megxit. The announcement came on January 8, 2020. Without warning the palace or coordinating with senior royals, Harry and Meghan released a statement on Instagram declaring that they would be stepping back from their roles as senior members of the royal family. They expressed their intention to split their time between North America and the United Kingdom, to pursue financial independence, and to carve out a progressive new role within the monarchy. It was a declaration that broke centuries of tradition, a statement that blindsided not only the press and the public, but even the Queen herself. The backlash was immediate. The British press erupted with fury, condemning the couple for acting unilaterally and disrespecting the monarchy. Headlines screamed betrayal. Politicians weighed in, some accusing the Sussexes of abandoning their duty. Royal commentators described it as a constitutional crisis. For supporters, however, the move was bold, even heroic. They saw it as Harry and Meghan taking control of their lives, refusing to be victims of the same rigid system that had destroyed Princess Diana. Behind the scenes, the fallout was even more dramatic. The Queen summoned Harry, William, and Charles to Sandringham for what became known as the Sandringham Summit. It was an extraordinary meeting, held to determine the terms of Harry and Meghan's future. Reports from insiders described it as tense, emotional, and deeply painful. Harry, who had grown up within the monarchy, was now sitting across from his grandmother, his father, and his brother, defending his decision to walk away. For William, the sense of betrayal cut deep. For Charles, it was both a personal and political challenge. And for the Queen, it was perhaps the most difficult family crisis of her reign. The outcome was a compromise, though many saw it as punishment. Harry and Meghan would no longer use their HRH titles. They would repay taxpayer money used to renovate Frogmore Cottage. They would be free to pursue commercial ventures, but they would no longer represent the Queen. In effect, they were being cut loose, still part of the family, but no longer active royals. For some, it was a clean break. For others, it was exile. Public reaction was split down the middle. Supporters of the monarchy viewed Harry and Meghan's move as selfish, accusing them of wanting the privileges of royalty without the responsibility. Supporters of Harry and Meghan praised their courage, arguing that no one should be forced to endure the cruelty they had faced from the media and the lack of protection from the palace. Social media lit up with debates, hashtags, and heated arguments. In cafes, offices, and living rooms, the nation chose sides. For Harry, the decision was deeply personal. He had watched his mother struggle and ultimately lose her life under the same spotlight. He had begged the institution to protect Meghan, and in his eyes, they had failed. Walking away was, for him, an act of survival. For Meghan, it was liberation. No longer bound by protocols she never believed in, she could finally speak freely, live authentically, and pursue ambitions beyond the rigid role of Duchess. But liberation came with its own costs. Moving to Canada, and later to California, they found themselves financially independent but under even greater scrutiny. Every deal they signed, every public statement they made, was dissected. Critics accused them of cashing in on their royal status, while supporters argued they were simply building a new life on their own terms. The very idea of financial independence, which they had hoped would free them, became another source of criticism. Meanwhile, the strain within the royal family deepened. William and Harry's relationship grew colder. The once inseparable brothers now barely spoke. Charles, who had long envisioned a slimmed-down monarchy, was forced to face the reality that one of its most popular members had chosen to walk away entirely. The Queen, ever composed in public, was said to be heartbroken in private. The Megxit drama wasn't just a personal story, it was a global spectacle. It raised questions about the future of the monarchy in the modern world. Could an institution built on tradition survive when younger generations demanded transparency, equality, and freedom? Could love and individuality exist within the framework of centuries-old duty? Harry and Meghan's decision forced the world to confront these questions, whether it was ready to or not. And yet, beneath the politics and the headlines, the human story remained the most compelling. Harry and Meghan were a husband and wife trying to protect their family, trying to find happiness in a world that seemed determined to deny them peace. The tears, the arguments, the sleepless nights, these were not abstract political questions. They were the reality of two people who believed their only path forward was to break away. In leaving, Harry and Meghan ignited a firestorm that would follow them for years. The word Megxit became a shorthand for scandal, betrayal, and change. It was the moment when the cracks in the crown became too large to hide, when the fairy tale shattered, and when the modern royal family faced its greatest challenge in decades. For Harry and Meghan, it was the beginning of a new chapter. For the monarchy, it was a wound that would not heal easily. When Harry and Meghan boarded that plane and left the United Kingdom, they weren't just leaving behind the palace, the royal family, and the life they once knew. They were leaping into the unknown. North America, first Canada and then California, became the canvas on which they would attempt to paint a new future. Gone were the gilded halls and the stiff traditions. In their place were sprawling estates, sunshine, and the promise of freedom. Yet the move wasn't just about geography, it was about reinvention. This was Harry and Meghan's chance to prove they could thrive outside the monarchy. But the price of that reinvention would soon become evident. At first, their arrival in North America carried the aura of mystery. Where would they live? How would they earn money? Would they fade quietly into private life? Or would they use their fame to build something entirely new? The answers came swiftly. By mid-2020, Harry and Meghan had signed multi-million-dollar deals with streaming giants Netflix and Spotify. Their names alone were enough to spark bidding wars, with executives eager to cash in on their global brand. The Sussexes, once defined by tradition, were now celebrities in their own right. Their move to Montecito, California, was symbolic in itself. The estate they purchased was a far cry from Frogmore Cottage. It was a sprawling mansion with manicured gardens, far removed from the austerity of palace life. In Montecito, they were neighbors to Hollywood stars, tech billionaires, and cultural icons. Meghan, once an actress struggling for roles, now hosted A-list gatherings. Harry, once a prince bound by protocols, was spotted at events with CEOs and activists. The couple had exchanged tiaras and state dinners for Hollywood power lunches and production meetings. But while their surroundings changed, the scrutiny did not. Every announcement, every deal, every project became a headline. When they signed their Netflix deal, critics accused them of selling out, of using their royal titles to secure money and influence. When Meghan launched her podcast under their Spotify deal, detractors mocked the content and questioned her sincerity. When Harry released his memoir, the backlash was ferocious, with accusations that he was betraying his family for profit. The very financial independence they had sought became another weapon in the arsenal of their critics. Still, there was no denying the impact of their new ventures. Their Netflix projects drew millions of viewers, particularly the docuseries that pulled back the curtain on their departure from the royal family. The series was raw, emotional, and controversial, showing a side of the monarchy that had rarely been exposed. For supporters, it was validation of everything Harry and Meghan had endured. For detractors, it was another act of betrayal, an airing of family grievances for global consumption. But either way, it was effective. People were watching, talking, and debating, and Harry and Meghan had cemented their place in the cultural conversation. Meghan, too, leaned into her role as a voice on social issues. She spoke on women's rights, racial inequality, and mental health. She positioned herself not just as a duchess, but as a thought leader. To her fans, this was Meghan stepping into her power, using her platform to amplify causes she cared about. To her critics, it was proof of her ambition, a woman chasing influence and prestige. The divide between perception and reality grew sharper, but Meghan pressed forward, undeterred. Harry, meanwhile, struggled with his identity. In California, he was no longer just a prince. He was a husband, a father, and an entrepreneur. Yet the shadow of his royal past lingered. His memoir revealed deep wounds, his struggles with the press, and his resentment toward his brother and father. These confessions made headlines worldwide, adding fuel to the fire of royal drama. But they also humanized him in ways few royals had ever dared. For Harry, speaking his truth was not just a business move. It was a form of catharsis, a way to reclaim his voice after years of silence. But with fame and fortune came new challenges. Their security costs skyrocketed, with estimates in the millions each year. Their need to maintain relevance meant constantly producing, constantly delivering content that kept the public interested. The same media they claimed to flee in Britain followed them to California, snapping photos of their children, reporting on their every move, and spinning narratives that painted them as either visionaries or villains. Privacy, the very thing they had sought, remained elusive. Their relationships with Hollywood figures also drew attention. Meghan's friendships with Oprah Winfrey, Serena Williams, and Tyler Perry placed her firmly in elite circles. Harry's appearances at conferences and charity events gave him a platform to speak on issues ranging from climate change to mental health. Together, they built Archewell, their foundation, as a vehicle for philanthropy and media production. Archewell became their brand, a blend of activism, entertainment, and influence. Yet even here, critics accused them of being more interested in image than impact, questioning the transparency of their charitable endeavors. Still, California offered them something they had never had before: control. No longer did they have to answer to courtiers or follow palace protocol. They decided what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. For Meghan, this was empowerment. For Harry, it was both liberating and unsettling. The structure of royal life, as suffocating as it had been, had also provided stability. In California, they had freedom, but freedom came with uncertainty. As the months turned into years, the couple's image solidified into something polarizing. To supporters, they were trailblazers, two people brave enough to leave behind a centuries-old institution to live authentically. To critics, they were opportunists, royals who had turned their backs on duty for wealth and fame. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in the middle. But what was undeniable was that Harry and Meghan were no longer just royals. They were a brand, a business, and a force that the world could not ignore. California had given them the stage they craved, but it also magnified every flaw, every misstep. It was a place of opportunity, but also of exposure. Hollywood deals, philanthropic ventures, and media projects filled their days, but behind the glamour, the cracks in their personal relationship deepened. Freedom had been their goal, but freedom could not erase the scars of the past, nor could it protect them from the pressures of the present. As Harry and Meghan settled into their new lives across the Atlantic, the fractures left behind in the United Kingdom grew into canyons. No longer was it a matter of quiet tension or whispered disagreements. The divide between Harry and his family, particularly his brother William and his father Charles, had become one of the defining narratives of modern royal history. For the public, it was Shakespearean. Two brothers once bound by grief, now locked in bitter estrangement. A son who had always been his father's emotional shadow, now openly criticizing him on a global stage. The rift was personal, emotional, and political all at once, and its consequences rippled across the monarchy. The seeds of this conflict had been planted long before Harry and Meghan's departure. William had always been cautious, steady, the heir to the throne who understood that every move he made had to be calculated. Harry, by contrast, had always lived as the spare, freer but more reckless, his role undefined beyond supporting his brother's destiny. When Meghan entered Harry's life, those differences sharpened into divisions. William's warning to Harry, "Don't rush into this," was meant, perhaps, as brotherly concern. But Harry heard it as judgment of Meghan herself, and the sting never left him. That moment, simple as it may have been, became the first fracture in a brotherhood that had weathered everything from childhood trauma to military service. As time went on, the media amplified every hint of tension. Where William and Kate represented tradition and duty, Harry and Meghan were cast as rebels and disruptors. This narrative created competition where perhaps none had been intended, but it fueled resentment nonetheless. Public appearances between the couples became studies in body language, stiff smiles, avoided eye contact, carefully choreographed interactions that lacked the warmth of earlier years. The so-called Fab Four, once heralded as the future of the monarchy, had dissolved before it could truly begin. The Oprah Winfrey interview in 2021 was the breaking point. Sitting under the California sun, Harry and Meghan laid bare their grievances. Accusations of racism within the royal family, Meghan's cries for help with her mental health that were allegedly ignored, and Harry's own admission that his father had stopped taking his calls. The words reverberated like thunder across the world. For Charles, the interview was a humiliation, a son turning his pain into a public indictment. For William, it was betrayal, the airing of family matters that he believed should have remained private. "We are very much not a racist family," William insisted in a rare public rebuttal, his face tight with anger. But the damage had been done. Harry's memoir only deepened the wounds. He wrote of physical altercations with William, describing one confrontation where his brother allegedly pushed him to the ground during an argument about Meghan. He spoke of feeling overshadowed, treated as expendable, and dismissed within the royal hierarchy. He accused Charles of being emotionally distant, more concerned with public image than fatherhood. These revelations were explosive not because they were shocking, but because they confirmed what many had long suspected, that beneath the polished facade of royal unity lay a family fractured by resentment, jealousy, and silence. For William, the impact was profound. He had carried the burden of responsibility his whole life, and Harry's words seemed to undercut not just him personally, but the very institution he was destined to lead. To him, Harry's attacks were not just about sibling rivalry. They were blows to the credibility of the monarchy itself. For Charles, who had spent decades rebuilding his image after the fallout of his marriage to Diana, his son's public accusations reopened old wounds. He was portrayed once again as the cold father, the man who failed to comfort his children in their darkest hours. The rift was no longer a private matter. It became a public drama, played out in interviews, books, and headlines. Every family gathering, or lack thereof, was scrutinized. When Harry returned for Prince Philip's funeral in 2021, cameras captured the brief interactions between him and William. Analysts dissected every glance, every step, every word exchanged. The world was hungry for signs of reconciliation, but what they saw instead was distance. Even at Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee and later at her funeral, the frost between the brothers was palpable. And yet, beneath the anger and betrayal, there remained the unshakable bond of blood. William and Harry had shared experiences no one else could understand. The loss of their mother, the trauma of growing up in a gilded cage, the pressure of a world that demanded perfection. That history could not be erased, but it could be buried beneath layers of hurt. Each public jab, each revelation, pushed reconciliation further out of reach. The rift with Charles carried its own complexities. Harry still spoke of loving his father, but his words were laced with bitterness. He accused Charles of failing Meghan, of failing him, of prioritizing the institution over his children. Charles, for his part, maintained public silence, the royal way of enduring scandals without direct confrontation. Yet insiders spoke of his heartbreak, of a man who longed for his son but could not bring himself to bridge the divide. Now as king, Charles faced the impossible task of balancing his role as father and monarch, knowing that every move he made toward Harry would be scrutinized as weakness or favoritism. What made the rift even more tragic was the role of the public. Every interview, every memoir excerpt, every headline turned the family conflict into entertainment. Supporters of Harry and Meghan cheered their honesty, while defenders of William and Charles condemned the Sussexes for betrayal. The monarchy, once a symbol of unity, had become a family divided before the world's eyes. And Harry, caught between love for Meghan and longing for his family, found himself further isolated. California had given Harry freedom, but it had also put an ocean between him and the only family he had left. Phone calls were rare, visits rarer still. William and Charles moved forward with royal duties, presenting a united front with Queen Camilla and Kate. Harry and Meghan built their brand in America, carving out a life defined less by duty and more by opportunity. The paths that had once run side by side had diverged completely, with little chance of meeting again. Yet even in the bitterness, there was a lingering question. Was reconciliation still possible? Could the bonds of brotherhood and fatherhood, strained though they were, withstand the storms of public betrayal and private pain? Or had the rift become permanent, a wound that time could not heal? For the monarchy, the stakes were immense. For Harry, the pain was personal. The rift with William and Charles was more than a family feud. It was the breaking of the very foundation of his life, a fracture that would shape his every decision from that point forward. By the spring of 2025, what had been a slow-burning tension finally reached a critical mass. For Harry, the cumulative weight of estrangement, public scrutiny, and private frustration became unbearable. Every interview, every headline, and every whisper of criticism felt like a nail in the coffin of his marriage. Meghan, whose ambitions and vision for their life together had once aligned perfectly with his own, now seemed increasingly distant, increasingly determined to pursue paths that clashed with his values, his responsibilities, and his sense of self. The palace may have been thousands of miles away, but its shadow loomed large over their California home, turning ordinary disagreements into battles fought with the intensity of royal stakes. It was not a single event that led Harry to consider divorce, but rather a series of revelations and confrontations that chipped away at the foundation of their relationship. One of the most pivotal moments occurred during what insiders described as a quiet family meeting, a gathering intended to discuss private business matters, but which quickly devolved into an emotionally charged confrontation. Harry had approached Meghan with concerns about their public image and financial decisions, particularly surrounding the management of their production company and media partnerships. Meghan, according to sources close to the couple, reacted defensively, arguing that Harry was trying to control her choices. Words were exchanged, voices raised, and for the first time in years, Harry felt a profound sense of disconnection from the woman he had once considered his partner in every sense. The rift was not confined to financial disputes or public appearances. At the heart of Harry's growing sense of alienation was a feeling of emotional betrayal. He recalled moments when he needed support, times of self-doubt, anxiety, and fear about the future, and perceived that Meghan prioritized personal gain or public image over his well-being. Those quiet nights of loneliness, amplified by the constant glare of cameras and social media, created a sense of isolation that even the luxury of their California estate could not assuage. The emotional calculus became clear. He could no longer reconcile the love he felt for Meghan with the growing erosion of trust and understanding. Amidst the tension, advisors close to Harry reportedly warned him about the consequences of publicly announcing a divorce. They reminded him that such an action would be seismic, shaking not only his life but the monarchy itself. A divorce was more than a personal decision. It was a cultural event, capable of reshaping public perception and historical narratives. Yet the longer Harry delayed, the more the stress consumed him, making the eventual decision inevitable. According to insiders, the conversations leading to his announcement were painstaking, measured, and fraught with emotion. Every angle was considered. The impact on their children, the response from the media, the reaction from the royal family, and the potential fallout in both the United States and the United Kingdom. On the morning of the announcement, Harry reportedly awoke with a clarity he had not experienced in years. The weight of expectation, the pressure of public scrutiny, and the strain on his personal life had reached their peak. It was a moment of truth. Advisors recall him saying, "I cannot continue living in a marriage that no longer reflects who I am, nor the future I want to build for my family." That statement, simple yet loaded with significance, would later become the cornerstone of his public declaration. The announcement itself was meticulously planned. Rather than delivering it in a casual statement or through social media, Harry opted for a televised address, one that would allow him to convey his emotions, intentions, and rationale with nuance and gravity. The production team, advisors, and legal experts worked in concert to ensure that the statement was precise, emotionally resonant, and legally sound. The words were carefully chosen. They would communicate heartbreak, accountability, and honesty, while minimizing unnecessary conflict and speculation. As the cameras rolled and the world tuned in, Harry spoke directly to a global audience. He acknowledged the years of joy and challenges shared with Meghan, expressing gratitude for the experiences that had shaped their lives. Yet he did not shy away from the truth. Their paths had diverged, their goals and values had shifted, and the strain on their marriage had become insurmountable. His tone was measured but charged with emotion, conveying both sorrow and resolve. In those moments, millions around the world felt the gravity of a royal divorce unfolding in real time, a historic moment unprecedented in modern memory. The announcement sent shockwaves through the United Kingdom and beyond. Social media erupted with debate, speculation, and commentary, while news outlets scrambled to analyze every nuance of Harry's statement. Supporters praised his honesty and courage, while critics questioned the timing, motives, and implications for the monarchy. Within hours, Buckingham Palace issued a measured response, emphasizing the private nature of family matters while acknowledging Harry's statements. Analysts interpreted the royal statement as both conciliatory and strategic, seeking to maintain public confidence while avoiding further escalation. Behind the scenes, the immediate aftermath of the announcement was emotionally charged. Harry, having articulated a decision months in the making, reported feeling a mixture of relief, sorrow, and apprehension. He understood that the public declaration marked not the end of conflict but the beginning of a new chapter, one defined by legal negotiations, media scrutiny, and the delicate process of co-parenting. Meghan, according to insiders, experienced a whirlwind of emotions as well: shock, anger, and the dawning realization that her partnership with Harry had reached an irrevocable turning point. This breaking point, though painful, was also a moment of clarity. Harry realized that remaining in a marriage devoid of mutual understanding and respect would only perpetuate misery for both himself and Meghan. The decision to divorce was not born of malice or whim. It was an act of self-preservation, a step toward reclaiming agency over his own life and choices. Yet, even as he embraced this difficult truth, he understood the consequences. Public scrutiny, familial strain, and historical record would follow him for decades. The global reaction to the announcement highlighted the complex interplay between private emotion and public spectacle. In the United Kingdom, citizens debated loyalty, tradition, and the responsibilities of royal figures. Across social media, supporters of Harry emphasized the importance of mental health, personal autonomy, and the right to step away from toxic circumstances. Critics condemned the public nature of the announcement, arguing that private family matters should remain confidential. News anchors, royal commentators, and social media influencers dissected every phrase, gesture, and inflection, underscoring the reality that Harry's decision was not merely personal. It was inherently political, cultural, and symbolic. And yet, at its core, the announcement revealed a fundamental truth. Harry was no longer willing to sacrifice his well-being, autonomy, and emotional stability for the sake of appearances. The act of declaring a divorce, while dramatic, was also deeply human, a recognition that even those born into privilege and expectation are vulnerable to the complexities of love, ambition, and personal growth. In choosing to step forward and acknowledge this truth, Harry set in motion a series of events that would redefine his life, his family relationships, and the public perception of the modern monarchy. The moment Harry's announcement aired, the reverberations were immediate and intense. Across the United Kingdom, citizens paused their routines, glued to televisions, smartphones, and radios, trying to process the unprecedented revelation. Newspapers scrambled to update their headlines, each vying to capture the drama in bold, attention-grabbing phrases. Social media erupted almost instantly, hashtags trending within minutes as millions debated, speculated, and expressed their emotional reactions. The atmosphere felt electric, as if the country itself had collectively inhaled a sharp breath and was now holding it, waiting for what would come next. Royal watchers and commentators, who had long chronicled the life of Harry and Meghan with meticulous attention, struggled to encapsulate the weight of the announcement. Some expressed sympathy, highlighting the courage required to make such a personal revelation in a world that had relentlessly scrutinized their every move. Others focused on the implications for the monarchy, questioning whether this divorce would alter the royal family's public perception or even destabilize its carefully maintained image of unity and tradition. Political analysts chimed in as well, framing the divorce in terms of national identity, public expectations, and the role of modern royalty in the 21st century. The general public's reaction was a complex mix of disbelief, support, and outrage. In coffee shops, offices, and homes across England, conversations ignited spontaneously. People debated whether Harry had acted impulsively or whether he had carefully calculated the timing, considering public opinion, Meghan's career ambitions, and the royal family's potential response. Many expressed shock, unable to reconcile the image of the devoted prince with the sudden declaration of divorce. Others were more empathetic, noting that even figures of immense privilege are human, capable of heartbreak, disappointment, and the desire to reclaim their autonomy. Social media became a battlefield for opinion and speculation. Twitter and Instagram were flooded with posts dissecting Harry's words, tone, and demeanor. Memes emerged almost immediately, some humorous, others biting, all capturing the intensity of public fascination. YouTube channels and podcasts jumped into overdrive, producing round-the-clock commentary and analysis. The digital landscape transformed into a living archive of real-time reactions, reflecting the diverse spectrum of opinion in the United Kingdom and across the globe. The royal family, meanwhile, faced its own internal crisis. Advisors hurriedly convened emergency meetings to assess the potential fallout and formulate a strategic response. Buckingham Palace issued a carefully worded statement, emphasizing the private nature of family matters while acknowledging Harry's announcement. The statement aimed to maintain decorum and authority, projecting a sense of stability despite the shock rippling through the monarchy. Yet behind the scenes, senior staff grappled with the emotional strain of reconciling public image with private family dynamics. The palace, long accustomed to managing crises, recognized that this situation was uniquely delicate, highly personal, intensely public, and historically unprecedented in its immediacy and scope. Media coverage in the days following the announcement painted a multifaceted picture. Newspapers offered detailed retrospectives of Harry and Meghan's relationship, tracing its trajectory from their initial meeting to the current breaking point. Analysts highlighted key moments of tension, including prior public disputes, career decisions, and disagreements over family priorities. Expert commentators speculated on the motivations behind Harry's timing, weighing whether the announcement reflected long-simmering discontent or a strategic decision aligned with his broader ambitions. Across talk shows and news segments, voices dissected body language, phrasing, and potential implications for the royal family's future. Public opinion polls conducted shortly after the announcement revealed striking divisions. Many respondents expressed sympathy for Harry, citing the courage required to publicly acknowledge a failing marriage. Others criticized him for airing private grievances in such a highly visible format, arguing that discretion should have prevailed. Meghan's reputation, already a subject of intense scrutiny, became a focal point of debate, with supporters defending her actions and critics questioning her influence on the marriage. The polarized reactions underscored a key truth. In the age of global media, private decisions by public figures are never isolated, and the ripple effects are immediate and far-reaching. International media coverage mirrored the intensity within the United Kingdom. Outlets in the United States, Australia, Canada, and Europe provided extensive commentary, often framing the divorce within the context of celebrity culture, media intrusion, and the evolving role of modern royalty. Analysts highlighted the challenges faced by Harry and Meghan in balancing personal freedom with public expectation and questioned whether the pressures of fame and scrutiny had made the marriage unsustainable. In many ways, the story transcended the boundaries of the royal family, becoming a case study in human emotion, media influence, and the collision of private life with global attention. The announcement also triggered immediate economic and social effects. Brands associated with the royal couple saw fluctuations in public interest, as marketing teams scrambled to anticipate shifts in consumer sentiment. Charitable organizations linked to Harry and Meghan issued statements reaffirming their missions, mindful of the need to maintain credibility and distance from personal controversies. Even local communities felt the ripple effects, with discussions in schools, workplaces, and social spaces reflecting the heightened awareness of the divorce and its social significance. For Harry himself, the public reaction was both validating and overwhelming. While some criticism stung, the outpouring of support from those who understood the weight of his decision offered a measure of solace. Friends and advisors emphasized that stepping forward publicly, while difficult, allowed Harry to reclaim a sense of agency over his life. Each statement of support, each message of understanding, reinforced the notion that he was not alone, even in the glare of unprecedented media scrutiny. As the days passed, the narrative continued to evolve. Journalists uncovered new insights, often drawn from previously unreported incidents or private interviews. Social media debates deepened, with users sharing personal reflections, historical comparisons, and speculative scenarios about the future. Within this maelstrom of attention, Harry maintained a careful balance, asserting his personal truth, managing his public image, and preparing for the legal and familial complexities that would inevitably follow. The public reaction, in its entirety, highlighted a profound paradox. The more intensely Harry's life was scrutinized, the more human it appeared. Millions around the world witnessed a royal figure grappling with universal challenges, heartbreak, moral conflict, and the pursuit of personal happiness. The intensity of the response underscored the stakes of modern royalty, where personal choices are never isolated, and the intersection of public duty and private emotion is inescapable. This chapter of shock, fascination, and reflection set the stage for the next phase of Harry's journey, navigating the legal and logistical realities of divorce while preserving his identity, relationships, and legacy. It revealed the complex interplay between human emotion, societal expectation, and media scrutiny, a dynamic that would shape not only Harry and Meghan's lives, but also the public perception of the monarchy for years to come. The announcement of Harry's intention to divorce Meghan immediately set into motion a complex and unprecedented legal process. Unlike the average citizen, Harry and Meghan's situation was anything but ordinary. Their marriage, steeped in international attention, involved not only the personal assets and considerations typical of divorce, but also the scrutiny of the British monarchy, the media, and a global audience that watched every move with relentless intensity. The stakes were enormous, both financially and socially, and the path forward required meticulous planning, legal expertise, and emotional resilience. Within hours of the announcement, legal teams for both parties mobilized. Divorce lawyers, many with experience handling high-profile cases, began reviewing prenuptial agreements, public statements, and previous financial disclosures. Harry's advisors were acutely aware that every decision would be dissected publicly. They strategized carefully, understanding that traditional privacy protocols might not fully protect the details from leaking into the press. Meghan, equally determined to assert her position, coordinated with her own legal team, prepared to protect her interests and reputation while navigating the labyrinth of royal expectations and public curiosity. The legal process in the United Kingdom for a high-profile divorce involves both formal and informal components. While the courts would ultimately oversee the division of assets, custody arrangements, and spousal support, the informal negotiations often played an equally critical role. Both parties had to consider not just the financial implications, but also the potential impact on their public images. A misstep in negotiation could fuel media speculation, sway public opinion, and even influence future opportunities for both Harry and Meghan. Each meeting, phone call, and document required careful scrutiny, balancing legal strategy with the nuanced optics of public perception. One of the central challenges in the legal battle was the handling of assets tied to the royal family. Harry and Meghan's property holdings, including their estate in Frogmore Cottage and other personal assets, required complex valuation and equitable consideration. Advisors examined property deeds, financial statements, and investments, analyzing how best to structure settlements while maintaining discretion. International property, business ventures, and trust funds introduced additional layers of complexity. Experts in financial law were brought in to ensure that all transactions complied with both British law and international standards, minimizing risks while protecting the interests of both parties. Custody and family arrangements added another layer of tension. Harry and Meghan's children, already subjects of intense public interest, required careful consideration. Legal advisors emphasized the importance of prioritizing the welfare of the children, coordinating with child psychologists, security teams, and family counselors. Every decision regarding visitation, residency, and schooling had to account for the media attention that could potentially compromise their privacy and emotional well-being. The courts, while supportive of family privacy, would also weigh the practicalities of co-parenting in the public eye, requiring nuanced and sensitive negotiation. Media involvement was an ever-present factor in the legal strategy. Journalists and paparazzi closely monitored every development, seeking exclusive stories or insights into private discussions. Leaks, whether intentional or accidental, had the potential to shift public sentiment dramatically. Legal teams had to anticipate the consequences of each action and statement, often preparing press responses and public-facing narratives in tandem with legal filings. Harry and Meghan's legal teams understood that controlling the narrative was as critical as navigating the legal documents themselves. Misrepresentation or rumor could have lasting implications, not just for the divorce settlement, but for their ongoing public engagement and personal reputations. Throughout the proceedings, both Harry and Meghan faced intense emotional pressure. Even with experienced advisors and legal experts at their side, the process of publicly separating was emotionally taxing. Each hearing, negotiation, and document review reminded them of the collapse of their shared life and ambitions. Yet, amid the tension, both were determined to approach the process with dignity, striving to find solutions that balanced fairness, privacy, and their own personal growth. Emotional support networks, family members, close friends, and mental health professionals played a crucial role in helping them navigate the psychological strain. Public reaction to the unfolding legal battle added another dimension of complexity. Social media platforms were rife with commentary, predictions, and sometimes misinformation. Hashtags related to the divorce trended continuously, reflecting the intensity of public interest. Commentators debated the fairness of settlements, speculated on custody arrangements, and even suggested potential implications for the broader monarchy. The global audience, while captivated, sometimes overlooked the personal toll the legal process exacted on Harry and Meghan, treating the proceedings as entertainment rather than as the deeply human experience it was. Royal family dynamics further complicated the legal considerations. Advisors from Buckingham Palace had to navigate the delicate balance between supporting Harry as a family member and protecting the institutional integrity of the monarchy. Public statements were carefully drafted, emphasizing respect for personal autonomy while maintaining a commitment to tradition. Family meetings, often private and intense, weighed the emotional and public implications of each decision. The need to manage perceptions of unity and decorum added layers of diplomatic strategy to what was already a legally and emotionally complex situation. International considerations also came into play. Meghan's dual citizenship and global business ventures required legal teams to coordinate across jurisdictions. Questions regarding taxation, business ownership, and inheritance laws were critical, as settlements needed to comply with regulations in multiple countries. International lawyers, financial advisors, and tax specialists were brought in to ensure that the agreement was robust, equitable, and legally enforceable across borders. These complexities made the divorce not just a matter of personal separation, but a high-stakes international legal endeavor. The legal battle unfolded over weeks and months, each step closely monitored by both the media and the public. Negotiations, while sometimes tense, ultimately demonstrated the capacity of Harry and Meghan to approach a difficult personal situation with strategic acumen. Every document, every statement, and every decision reflected a balance between protecting personal interests and managing public perception. The process was grueling, testing not only their legal teams, but also their personal resilience and emotional fortitude. By the time the initial agreements were reached, a sense of cautious resolution began to emerge. Legal documents were drafted with precision, settlements structured with foresight, and custody arrangements carefully outlined. While not devoid of conflict, the process showcased the couple's determination to handle the divorce responsibly, acknowledging both the personal and public ramifications of their decisions. For Harry, the legal battle marked a pivotal chapter in reclaiming agency over his life, demonstrating that even in the glare of global attention, careful planning, support, and integrity could guide a path forward. This chapter in the story of Harry and Meghan revealed the extraordinary challenges of navigating a divorce under intense public scrutiny. It highlighted the interplay between legal expertise, emotional resilience, media management, and royal dynamics. In doing so, it underscored the reality that modern royalty, while accustomed to privilege, must still confront deeply human struggles, heartbreak, negotiation, and the pursuit of personal freedom, under conditions of unprecedented visibility. The announcement of Harry's decision to divorce Meghan Markle did not just remain within the private confines of legal offices and family residences. As the news broke, it detonated across social media, television broadcasts, newspapers, and online news platforms around the world. Within minutes, headlines screamed across screens: "Royal divorce shocker, Harry breaks silence. End of a royal marriage." The speed and intensity of public reaction were unprecedented, reflecting the extraordinary interest that surrounds anything connected to the British monarchy, especially involving Harry and Meghan. Social media platforms became an immediate battlefield. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok erupted with commentary, memes, and speculative analyses. Millions of users posted opinions, dissected the announcement, and drew their own conclusions about the reasons behind the divorce. Some expressed support for Harry, praising him for taking a courageous step and prioritizing his personal happiness. Others rallied behind Meghan, framing her as a victim of relentless media scrutiny and an unsympathetic public. Hashtags like #Harry and Meghan, #Royal Divorce, and #End of the Marriage began trending globally, fueling conversation, argument, and viral moments that amplified the drama in real time. Traditional media outlets also mobilized rapidly. British tabloids, known for their unrelenting coverage of the royal family, published special editions and dedicated online pages analyzing the divorce. Headlines were designed to grab attention. Prince Harry's shocking announcement rocks the monarchy, Meghan's reaction to Harry's divorce reveal, and royal family on edge as divorce details emerge. Television news anchors provided continuous commentary, inviting royal experts, psychologists, and former palace insiders to offer their perspectives. Each broadcast dissected every nuance of the announcement, from body language in public appearances to historical context within the royal family. International media amplified the coverage further. Outlets in the United States, Canada, Australia, and across Europe reported with a mixture of curiosity and speculation. In the United States, late-night talk shows seized the moment, with comedians and commentators crafting sketches and monologues centered on the divorce. News magazines published in-depth features, exploring the potential legal ramifications, financial implications, and social fallout. The global media attention transformed a personal family decision into a matter of international conversation, emphasizing the enduring fascination with the British monarchy and the celebrity status of Harry and Meghan. Public sentiment was deeply polarized. On one side, supporters of Harry hailed his decision as a reclaiming of independence, a refusal to be constrained by a marriage that had, according to speculation, become emotionally and psychologically untenable. Articles, opinion pieces, and social media posts framed him as a man willing to confront painful realities rather than endure a life of pretense. On the other side, critics questioned his timing, motives, and potential disregard for public perception, suggesting that the announcement might reflect impulsiveness, emotional distress, or a desire to control the narrative. Similarly, Meghan faced both sympathetic and critical reactions, with supporters emphasizing the pressures of life under constant scrutiny and detractors accusing her of contributing to the marital collapse. Royal experts and analysts weighed in heavily, providing historical context that helped the public understand the magnitude of the situation. Divorce within the royal family is rare and historically fraught with scandal, precedent, and institutional sensitivity. Analysts pointed to previous separations, comparing Harry and Meghan's circumstances to those of Princess Margaret, Princess Diana, and others, highlighting how modern media and global attention exponentially increased the pressure on contemporary royals. Every comment, prediction, and analysis fed into the ongoing narrative, keeping the story at the forefront of public attention. Financial implications became a key topic of public interest. Commentary and analysis explored the potential settlements, the division of assets, and the long-term financial security of both parties. With Frogmore Cottage, international investments, and media deals on the table, questions about the financial fallout dominated discussions. Some speculated on how the divorce might impact Harry's future endeavors, including speaking engagements, charitable work, and potential business ventures. Meanwhile, Meghan's media presence, including potential projects and appearances, was scrutinized for its ability to offset or mitigate any financial consequences from the separation. Public discussion also extended to the children. Harry and Meghan's son and daughter became central to speculation about custody arrangements, emotional impact, and future upbringing. Media outlets and social platforms debated how the divorce might influence their well-being, schooling, and public exposure. Psychologists and child development experts were frequently cited, emphasizing the need for privacy, stability, and thoughtful co-parenting strategies. Public fascination with the royal children added layers of complexity, as even minor updates about their lives were rapidly amplified across media channels, intensifying the spotlight on family dynamics. Security and logistical concerns further complicated the public fallout. With the announcement, both Harry and Meghan faced increased scrutiny in terms of safety, privacy, and public appearances. Security experts advised on how to manage crowds, media intrusion, and potential threats arising from heightened attention. Every public outing, charity event, or social appearance became a calculated risk, balancing visibility with protection. The pressure of maintaining normalcy amid global attention required constant vigilance and strategic planning. The royal family's internal response was swift yet measured. Statements emphasized discretion, respect, and concern for both parties. Advisors worked to maintain the monarchy's image, ensuring that the public understood that the family remained unified despite personal difficulties. Press releases were carefully worded, providing reassurance while avoiding detailed commentary on private matters. Family members were instructed on protocols for media interaction, interviews, and public appearances, highlighting the delicate balance between transparency and privacy in the midst of intense public scrutiny. As days turned into weeks, the story evolved continuously. New information, alleged sources, and insider commentary fueled speculation, creating a cycle of constant coverage. Every social media post, public appearance, or interview had the potential to shift perception and influence public sentiment. The intensity of the media frenzy underscored the extraordinary pressure of navigating personal decisions within the global spotlight, revealing the emotional and psychological toll of living under constant observation. Ultimately, the public reaction and media frenzy surrounding Harry's divorce announcement revealed the intersection of personal struggle, celebrity, and monarchy in the modern era. It highlighted the challenges of maintaining privacy, dignity, and control over one's narrative while operating within a global media ecosystem that thrives on immediacy, speculation, and sensationalism. For Harry and Meghan, managing public perception became as critical as addressing personal and legal realities, illustrating the profound complexities faced by modern royals navigating intimate life changes under relentless scrutiny. As the public and media erupted over the shocking news of Prince Harry's announcement to divorce Meghan Markle, the quieter, more strategic side of the monarchy went into overdrive. Behind the public spectacle, a highly coordinated effort unfolded within the corridors of Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, and Windsor Estates. Royal advisors, legal counsel, communications teams, and family intermediaries convened urgently to assess the situation, manage potential fallout, and prepare a roadmap that could preserve both the monarchy's dignity and Harry's personal interests. The first and most critical step was crisis assessment. Advisors rapidly compiled detailed reports on public sentiment, social media trends, media narratives, and potential legal implications. Every press release, news article, and television segment was cataloged and analyzed, with advisors identifying which angles could escalate tension and which could be leveraged to maintain a sense of control. Royal communications experts stressed the importance of precision. Every word issued to the public had to balance empathy with authority, personal acknowledgement with institutional stability. A single misstep could ignite international criticism or fuel further speculation. Simultaneously, legal counsel was engaged to review the practical implications of Harry's announcement. Divorce among royals is complex, involving not only personal assets but also residences, security provisions, charitable foundations, and potential media agreements. Lawyers pored over pre-existing contracts, prenuptial agreements, and financial disclosures to anticipate points of contention. Discussions extended to international considerations, as Harry and Meghan's life in the United States introduced new legal jurisdictions and tax complexities. Advisors debated scenarios ranging from amicable settlements to highly contentious public disputes, preparing contingency plans for every eventuality. Family dynamics also played a pivotal role in behind-the-scenes strategy. King Charles III, Prince William, and other senior members convened privately to discuss both personal and institutional perspectives. Their primary concern was maintaining the monarchy's image while supporting Harry as a family member navigating an intensely personal decision. Advisors facilitated private family meetings, offering counsel on language, tone, and approach for communicating with the public, the press, and internal staff. These discussions were sensitive, balancing loyalty, duty, and empathy. Every phrase was considered carefully, knowing that leaks or misstatements could exacerbate an already volatile media environment. One of the most delicate aspects involved Meghan herself. Advisors debated whether to reach out personally or to allow her representatives to communicate directly. The goal was to avoid public confrontation while ensuring her safety, privacy, and reputation. Security personnel were briefed and protocols were adjusted to account for her presence in multiple locations, including their California residence. Logistical challenges included travel arrangements, public appearances, and safeguarding her well-being amid intense scrutiny. Every move was calculated to minimize exposure while preserving the dignity of all parties involved. Strategic messaging became a central focus. Communications teams developed a layered approach, combining official statements, controlled interviews, and carefully timed social media releases. The intent was to manage the narrative without creating the appearance of manipulation. Royal experts crafted language emphasizing mutual respect, personal growth, and the complexity of private decisions, while avoiding commentary that could be perceived as judgmental or divisive. Media advisors also coordinated with journalists and editors to ensure accuracy in reporting, though the nature of global coverage meant that leaks and speculative narratives were nearly impossible to contain entirely. In addition to messaging, advisors examined the potential impact on charitable foundations and philanthropic endeavors. Harry and Meghan had been actively involved in multiple initiatives, including mental health advocacy, veterans support, and children's welfare programs. Advisors analyzed how the divorce might influence these engagements, both in terms of public perception and operational continuity. Strategies were developed to reassure donors, stakeholders, and the public that these initiatives would continue unaffected, mitigating reputational risks associated with personal upheaval. Psychological and emotional support for the family was also prioritized. Divorce, particularly under the global spotlight, carries immense emotional weight. Advisors engaged therapists, counselors, and life coaches to provide support for Harry, Meghan, and their children. Sessions focused on coping mechanisms, stress management, and strategies for maintaining familial bonds despite physical separation or altered living arrangements. Recognizing the intense public scrutiny, professionals also provided guidance on media interactions, public appearances, and managing online harassment or invasive reporting. Coordination extended to the broader royal network, including extended family and household staff. Each member was briefed on protocol, media boundaries, and internal communications. Staff received guidance on handling inquiries, managing confidentiality, and supporting both Harry and Meghan in practical matters. The ripple effects of the divorce extended beyond the central figures, influencing household operations, estate management, and even ceremonial planning. Advisors emphasized that consistency, discretion, and empathy were essential to maintaining stability during this tumultuous period. Contingency planning for public appearances was a particularly sensitive component. Any event attended by Harry, Meghan, or other family members required meticulous preparation, from security measures to media coordination. Advisors anticipated potential public reactions, prepared talking points, and developed strategies for navigating unforeseen questions or confrontations. Every detail, from seating arrangements to arrival times, was scrutinized to minimize risk and ensure that public interactions conveyed poise and composure despite underlying personal upheaval. Throughout this process, advisors constantly monitored the evolving media narrative. They tracked speculation, rumors, and emerging storylines, adjusting strategy in real time. Social media analytics provided immediate insight into public sentiment, allowing advisors to respond proactively to misinformation or inflammatory commentary. The goal was to maintain a sense of control, manage expectations, and preserve the monarchy's dignity while allowing Harry and Meghan space to navigate their private realities. As days passed, the meticulous orchestration behind the scenes became evident. Advisors balanced competing priorities: legal, emotional, logistical, and reputational. They recognized that every decision carried potential consequences, influencing not only Harry and Meghan, but also the broader public perception of the monarchy. Through careful planning, coordination, and strategic thinking, they sought to navigate the unprecedented situation with professionalism, foresight, and discretion. The intensity of this behind-the-scenes work underscored the extraordinary pressures faced by modern royals. Every choice, statement, and appearance was amplified globally, transforming a deeply personal decision into a matter of international attention. Advisors worked tirelessly to ensure that the monarchy retained dignity and stability, even as Harry and Meghan embarked on a path that would redefine their lives, their relationship, and their roles within the royal family. The moment Prince Harry's announcement reverberated through the media, the world seemed to pause and take note. News outlets across the United Kingdom and beyond scrambled to report, analyze, and speculate on the shocking development. Social media exploded with reactions, ranging from supportive messages to harsh criticism, while memes, hashtags, and trending topics dominated digital platforms within minutes. The announcement had ignited a firestorm that no one could ignore, and the monarchy faced one of its most intense public scrutiny moments in decades. In the United Kingdom, newspapers ran front-page stories with bold headlines. Sensational tabloids emphasized the drama, while broadsheets focused on the historical significance and societal implications of a royal divorce. Television news networks interrupted regular programming to cover the story, assembling panels of royal experts, commentators, and analysts. Each outlet sought to provide insight, yet the speed of events often outpaced their ability to confirm details. The narrative evolved rapidly, blending fact, speculation, and interpretation into a complex tapestry of public discourse. Public reaction was immediate and varied. Supporters of Prince Harry lauded his courage in making a difficult personal decision under extreme pressure. Many empathized with the struggles he and Meghan had faced under the relentless media spotlight, viewing the announcement as a necessary step toward autonomy and personal happiness. Social media platforms were flooded with posts expressing solidarity, hashtags trending to show support, and fan-driven campaigns aimed at shielding the couple from invasive coverage. Conversely, critics were quick to voice disapproval. Some questioned Harry's judgment, portraying the announcement as impulsive or reckless. Others criticized Meghan, questioning her role in the marital breakdown and scrutinizing her public persona. Opinion columns and comment sections filled with debate, speculation, and often scathing commentary, highlighting the deep divide in public sentiment. Every gesture, past interview, and social media post was dissected for potential evidence, fueling an ongoing narrative that blurred the line between personal and public scrutiny. Global media coverage further amplified the story. Outlets in Europe, North America, Asia, and beyond dedicated significant resources to reporting on the announcement. Cultural commentators and international analysts weighed in, exploring the implications of a high-profile royal divorce in a modern context. Analysts discussed the impact on the monarchy's global image, the precedent set for future royal relationships, and the broader societal conversation about marriage, family, and personal agency. In some countries, the story even sparked discussions on media intrusion, privacy rights, and the intense pressures faced by public figures. Celebrities and influencers added another layer to the conversation. Public figures took to social media, offering reactions ranging from support to criticism. Interviews with royal commentators, former palace staff, and experts in public relations provided additional perspective, highlighting both the emotional and logistical complexities of a royal divorce. Each contribution fed into the growing narrative, creating a multidimensional story that extended far beyond the confines of traditional news reporting. The intensity of the media frenzy posed challenges for the monarchy's communications team. Every statement, interview, and social media post was scrutinized for tone, implication, and accuracy. Spokespersons worked tirelessly to maintain clarity, balance, and decorum, issuing official statements that acknowledged the announcement while emphasizing discretion, privacy, and the continued respect for both Harry and Meghan. The team faced the delicate task of controlling the narrative without stifling legitimate public interest or escalating tensions. Public opinion polls conducted in the immediate aftermath revealed stark contrasts. In the UK, younger demographics tended to sympathize with Harry and Meghan, framing the announcement as a personal decision deserving of understanding and support. Older demographics, meanwhile, often expressed concern about the potential impact on the monarchy's image, the precedent set for royal protocols, and the public's perception of stability within the institution. Across international audiences, reactions reflected cultural attitudes toward marriage, celebrity, and the role of monarchy in contemporary society. social media played a particularly pivotal role in shaping the discourse. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook became arenas for rapid commentary, memes, and viral content. Influencers dissected every aspect of the announcement, while fan communities rallied to express solidarity or critique. Engagement metrics skyrocketed as posts, videos, and live streams proliferated, creating an almost real-time feedback loop that fed back into news coverage. Media outlets monitored these trends closely, adapting reporting to reflect the tone and direction of public sentiment. Amid the outcry, certain themes emerged consistently. The challenges of privacy, the pressures of living under constant scrutiny, and the intersection of personal happiness with public duty dominated conversations. Experts in psychology, media studies, and sociology were called upon to contextualize the situation, providing insight into the emotional toll of constant exposure and the societal fascination with high-profile relationships. These analyses added depth to the story, highlighting the human elements behind the headlines. International reactions also had diplomatic undertones. Officials in Commonwealth countries, accustomed to monitoring royal developments, expressed interest in understanding the potential implications for ceremonial roles, charitable affiliations, and national perception. While statements were carefully neutral, the announcement prompted internal discussions regarding protocols, representation, and continuity of royal engagement abroad. Even governments with less direct connection to the monarchy noted the event, recognizing its symbolic significance in global media narratives. Public demonstrations and gatherings also began to emerge. Supporters organized online petitions, rallies, and social media campaigns, framing the announcement as a statement on personal freedom, privacy rights, and autonomy. Critics, meanwhile, held discussions emphasizing tradition, stability, and institutional responsibility. The contrasting responses highlighted the polarizing nature of the announcement and underscored the enduring fascination with royal affairs and public consciousness. The financial implications became a subject of intense speculation. Analysts examined potential impacts on estates, security funding, charitable endeavors, and brand associations linked to Harry and Meghan. Market observers, media executives, and sponsors evaluated the ripple effects on partnerships, endorsements, and public engagements. Every financial detail, from security arrangements to estate management, was scrutinized, adding a layer of complexity to the unfolding story. Even within personal networks, reactions varied widely. Friends, extended family, and acquaintances of Harry and Meghan weighed in, either privately or publicly, adding nuance to the evolving narrative. These perspectives provided additional context, revealing layers of interpersonal dynamics that were invisible to the public eye yet critical in understanding the broader story. Insights from insiders, former staff, and confidants were frequently cited by media outlets, enhancing both the drama and authenticity of the coverage. The convergence of intense public interest, global media scrutiny, social media virality, and insider revelations created a feedback loop of unprecedented magnitude. Every new development, statement, or rumor fed into a growing cycle of attention, speculation, and analysis. The monarchy faced the daunting challenge of navigating a situation where personal decisions had become matters of international discourse, cultural debate, and historical significance. As the dust settled, it became clear that Harry and Meghan's announcement was more than a personal decision. It was a seismic event in the landscape of modern monarchy, media, and public perception. The public outcry, media frenzy, and global reaction underscored the complex interplay between private life and public role, revealing the pressures and challenges inherent in being a high-profile royal in the 21st century. The days following the announcement continued to be marked by intense scrutiny, evolving narratives, and emotional responses from all corners of society. Public conversations about marriage, duty, and personal agency gained renewed urgency, while the monarchy worked diligently behind the scenes to balance transparency, discretion, and institutional integrity. Analysts, commentators, and the general public alike watched closely, understanding that the implications of this moment would resonate for years to come. Behind the polished public statements and carefully crafted media narratives, a storm of emotions and private reactions raged within Prince Harry's closest inner circle. Those who had been with him through personal challenges, triumphs, and the intense scrutiny of royal life suddenly found themselves navigating a crisis of loyalty, surprise, and profound concern. Friends, advisors, and confidants were caught off guard by the magnitude of the announcement, and their responses were as revealing as they were complex. Harry's immediate family, including trusted advisors who had been managing both public relations and personal counsel for years, were among the first to learn of the decision. Private meetings, some emotionally charged and others hushed in solemnity, reflected the gravity of the situation. Discussions revolved around the implications of the announcement on personal relationships, security logistics, media strategy, and the broader impact on the monarchy. Those present were keenly aware that this was not simply a personal decision. It was a move that would ripple through every aspect of Harry's life and public perception. Friends who had long stood by Harry expressed a mixture of shock, empathy, and caution. Close confidants recalled the struggles he and Meghan had faced with relentless press intrusion, public criticism, and the challenge of balancing personal happiness with institutional expectations. Some were concerned about the emotional toll the divorce might take on Harry, particularly given the constant media scrutiny that would inevitably accompany every development. Others expressed cautious optimism, hoping that this step would provide Harry with a renewed sense of autonomy and peace of mind. Advisors and legal counsel were suddenly thrust into a high-pressure environment. Divorce proceedings, estate management, financial considerations, and security arrangements all had to be recalibrated in real time. Legal teams scrambled to prepare documentation, assess obligations, and advise on potential ramifications, while public relations specialists worked tirelessly to craft messaging that could mitigate backlash and manage public perception. The delicate balance between transparency and discretion was paramount, as even minor missteps could be amplified into headline news across the globe. Palace staff and household members also experienced a profound shift. Those responsible for the day-to-day management of Harry and Meghan's residences, engagements, and security were confronted with logistical challenges of immense scale. Schedules had to be adjusted, access permissions reviewed, and security protocols enhanced. Loyal staff members who had long been part of Harry's inner circle were suddenly navigating an environment of uncertainty and heightened scrutiny, balancing professional responsibility with personal loyalty. Within Harry's extended social network, reactions were equally complex. Longtime friends, both from childhood and adulthood, processed the news with a mix of empathy and incredulity. Conversations shifted from casual exchanges to urgent discussions about emotional support, strategic counsel, and practical assistance. Those closest to Harry recognized the intensity of the public attention that would follow and prepared to offer guidance, reassurance, and solidarity during a period that promised to be emotionally turbulent. One particularly poignant aspect of the private fallout involved the dynamics between Harry and his siblings. Communication lines that had long been tested by public tension and private disagreements faced renewed strain. While some siblings offered measured support, others expressed concern over timing, public optics, and potential long-term consequences. These interactions underscored the intricate interplay between personal relationships and public responsibility within a family that occupies a unique place in global consciousness. Harry's advisors also considered the emotional well-being of those indirectly affected. Close friends, household staff, and even distant family members were caught in a web of anxiety and speculation. Mental health professionals and counselors were consulted to provide support not only for Harry, but also for those navigating the intense emotional atmosphere surrounding a high-profile royal divorce. The human dimension of the fallout became increasingly apparent, revealing that the announcement affected far more than just the couple at its center. Within the palace and royal communications circles, there was a heightened awareness of the sensitivity required in managing insider information. Leaks, rumors, and misinterpretations had the potential to spiral out of control, complicating the carefully choreographed messaging strategy. Staff worked around the clock to ensure that all information released was accurate, timely, and framed to minimize misunderstanding, while also respecting the personal boundaries of those involved. The pressure was immense, and the stakes could not have been higher. As the private fallout unfolded, certain allies emerged as crucial pillars of support. Trusted advisors and longtime friends provided both emotional stability and strategic guidance. Their presence highlighted the importance of loyalty and discretion in moments of crisis, illustrating how a small circle of confidants could influence the trajectory of a high-profile personal decision. These relationships became not only a source of comfort, but also a strategic buffer against the tidal wave of public scrutiny. In addition to emotional and strategic considerations, the private fallout also touched on financial and practical matters. Estate management, asset division, charitable commitments, and ongoing security expenses required careful planning and negotiation. Advisors meticulously reviewed documentation, assessed obligations, and coordinated with legal teams to ensure that all decisions aligned with both Harry's personal interests and the broader considerations of public perception. Every detail, from property access to personal security arrangements, had to be scrutinized with precision. Ultimately, the private fallout revealed a landscape of loyalty, tension, and profound emotional complexity. Friends, family, and advisors all navigated a delicate balance between personal support, professional responsibility, and the anticipation of intense public scrutiny. Their reactions, conversations, and actions illuminated the human side of a decision that had already captured global attention, providing insight into the intricate web of relationships that underpinned Harry's life. Even as public narratives dominated headlines, the inner circle's experiences underscored a fundamental truth. A high-profile divorce, particularly within a royal context, is as much about private human dynamics as it is about public spectacle. The combination of loyalty, concern, strategy, and emotional investment created a charged atmosphere, revealing the profound impact of Harry's decision not only on himself, but also on everyone closely connected to him. The private fallout also set the stage for the next wave of developments. Every decision, every conversation, and every emotional response contributed to a ripple effect that would influence both public perception and personal dynamics in the weeks and months to come. As Harry navigated the immediate aftermath, the support, guidance, and sometimes conflicting perspectives of those closest to him would prove crucial in shaping the path forward. By examining the inner circle's reactions, one gains a clearer understanding of the human complexity behind headlines, soundbites, and social media chatter. This chapter of the story emphasizes that behind the royal image, public scrutiny, and global attention, there exists a network of relationships, emotions, and personal stakes that inform and influence every major decision. The private fallout, often unseen by the public eye, is as dramatic, revealing, and consequential as the public announcement itself. The moment Prince Harry's announcement broke, the global media landscape erupted into a storm of speculation, analysis, and relentless coverage. News outlets across continents scrambled to report, interpret, and amplify the shocking revelation. Within minutes, headlines splashed across screens, websites, and social media feeds, capturing attention with words charged with drama: royal shockwave, Harry splits from Meghan, divorce stuns the monarchy. The intensity and velocity of coverage underscored the enduring fascination the public held for the lives of the British royal family, particularly a couple who had long occupied the intersection of celebrity, scandal, and public intrigue. Media outlets, both traditional and digital, approached the story from multiple angles. Some framed it as a personal tragedy, focusing on the emotional toll and human drama of a marriage ending under the relentless glare of public scrutiny. Journalists highlighted the challenges Harry and Meghan had faced: invasive press coverage, polarized public opinion, and the difficult balancing act of maintaining personal happiness while fulfilling royal duties. Analysts speculated on the psychological and emotional consequences of the split, drawing on historical precedents and expert commentary to provide context and depth. Other segments of the media approached the announcement with a more sensationalist lens. Tabloid headlines emphasized conflict, betrayal, and intrigue, often speculating on underlying causes and private disagreements that may have contributed to the decision. Rumors circulated rapidly about alleged infidelities, power struggles, and strategic disagreements, fueling a narrative of royal drama that captivated millions. Commentary threads, social media posts, and opinion pieces further amplified these theories, creating a whirlwind of discussion that blurred the line between fact and speculation. Social media platforms erupted almost immediately. Hashtags related to Harry and Meghan trended globally, with millions of users weighing in on the news, sharing opinions, memes, and personal reflections. Public sentiment was divided, with some expressing sympathy and support for Harry's courage in making such a difficult decision, while others criticized the couple for perceived missteps or inconsistencies in their public behavior. The rapidity and intensity of social media engagement amplified the story, ensuring that it became a dominant topic of conversation across multiple digital spaces within hours. International news organizations also joined the fray, interpreting the announcement through diverse cultural and political lenses. In Europe, analysts focused on the implications for the monarchy and the British public, exploring historical patterns of royal separations and the social consequences of high-profile divorces. In the United States and other regions, media outlets emphasized the celebrity aspect of the couple, often framing the story in a manner reminiscent of high-profile Hollywood breakups. The universality of the coverage highlighted the global resonance of Harry and Meghan's lives, illustrating how personal decisions could carry international significance. Experts in media and communications weighed in, analyzing the strategy behind the timing, wording, and dissemination of the announcement. Public relations specialists noted the calculated precision in Harry's statement, emphasizing the balance between emotional honesty and media control. Analysts dissected every phrase, tone, and punctuation mark, interpreting subtleties as deliberate signals to various audiences: the public, royal family members, advisors, and critics alike. This layer of media scrutiny added complexity to the narrative, as each sentence became a point of debate, analysis, and further reporting. Commentary programs and panel discussions proliferated, featuring royal correspondents, psychologists, and cultural commentators. These forums explored potential motivations, anticipated consequences, and the broader societal implications of the announcement. Questions such as, what does this mean for the monarchy's image, and how will this affect public perception of royal duties, became central to televised debates and online forums. The multiplicity of perspectives underscored the depth of public interest and the interconnectedness of personal decisions with broader cultural narratives. Media outlets also paid close attention to the reactions of other royal family members. Speculation regarding the Queen's response, the Council of Senior Advisors, and the commentary from other princes and princesses added layers of intrigue to the story. Observers noted subtle cues in official statements, public appearances, and ceremonial conduct, interpreting body language and word choice as potential indicators of internal dynamics and evolving relationships within the royal household. The frenzy extended to entertainment media as well, with talk shows, podcasts, and celebrity commentators analyzing the human and relational aspects of the announcement. Discussions ranged from the practical, how assets and titles might be divided, to the emotional, with experts offering insights into coping mechanisms, resilience, and the psychological strain of public divorce. This multidimensional coverage highlighted the intersection of personal lives, public duty, and global media consumption, emphasizing the intricate web of influence surrounding high-profile figures like Harry and Meghan. Meanwhile, newspapers and online outlets seized upon historical parallels, drawing comparisons to other royal separations and celebrity divorces. Columns explored lessons from the past, public reactions to prior announcements, and the evolving role of media in shaping narrative and perception. These historical analyses provided depth and context, reminding audiences that while the circumstances were unique, the intersection of private decisions and public scrutiny was a recurring theme in the lives of prominent figures. The media frenzy also had tangible effects on Harry and Meghan's personal lives. Security measures intensified around their residences, travel arrangements became more complex, and interactions with the public were carefully choreographed to minimize risk and unwanted exposure. Advisors continually monitored news cycles, social media trends, and public sentiment to anticipate challenges and respond strategically, navigating a rapidly evolving landscape where every headline could provoke further reaction. Amid the whirlwind, The couple themselves had to process the consequences of the media storm. The intensity of coverage, the proliferation of opinions, and the relentless public gaze created a pressure cooker environment. Each news story, speculative article, or viral post added to the emotional weight, reinforcing the reality that personal decisions in the public eye carry consequences far beyond the immediate circle of family and friends. The interplay between personal choice and global attention underscored the extraordinary circumstances of their lives. As the media frenzy continued, it became evident that this announcement was not just another royal development. It was a defining cultural moment. It sparked conversations about marriage, celebrity, media intrusion, and the balance between personal autonomy and public expectation. Public reactions ranged from empathy to judgment, fascination to outrage, reflecting the complexity of human engagement with figures who occupy both symbolic and relational significance. In the weeks following the announcement, the media continued to dissect, debate, and speculate, creating a feedback loop in which coverage influenced public perception, which in turn shaped subsequent reporting. Analysts observed that the story's longevity in headlines was fueled not only by the inherent drama of a royal divorce, but also by the broader societal fascination with power, status, and intimate human relationships under scrutiny. This chapter of the story highlights the symbiotic relationship between public figures and media institutions. Harry's announcement served as a catalyst for global discourse, illuminating the mechanisms through which information spreads, narratives are constructed, and audiences engage with high-profile events. The media frenzy was not merely a reaction. It was a force that actively shaped the interpretation, emotional resonance, and social implications of the announcement. By examining the worldwide media response, one gains insight into the profound impact of a single declaration on global consciousness. The coverage revealed not only the public's interest in the personal lives of royals, but also the power of media to influence perception, frame debate, and amplify emotional and cultural narratives. The frenzy surrounding Harry's announcement underscored the inescapable reality that in the modern world, personal decisions are inseparable from public consequences, especially for individuals who live under a global spotlight. The shockwaves of Prince Harry's announcement did not dissipate quickly. Even weeks after the revelation, the reverberations were felt in every corner of his life, reshaping relationships, altering daily routines, and forcing a reconsideration of priorities and personal identity. The aftermath was not a neatly packaged conclusion. It was an evolving narrative, complex, layered, and emotionally charged. Understanding this period requires a deep dive into the psychological, social, and logistical transformations that Harry experienced in the wake of his decision. Immediately following the announcement, Harry faced an intense recalibration of his public persona. Previously, he had been seen as a devoted husband, a modern royal navigating the challenges of public duty and personal ambition alongside his wife. Now, the perception shifted dramatically. Media outlets framed him in contrasting lights. Some painted him as courageous for taking control of his personal life, while others suggested impulsiveness or instability. This dichotomy placed Harry in a unique position, straddling the line between admiration and scrutiny, compelling him to manage not only the practical realities of divorce, but also the fluctuating narratives surrounding his character. Social circles were immediately affected. Friends and confidants offered support, counsel, and sometimes judgment, adding layers of complexity to Harry's interpersonal interactions. The Duke found himself navigating delicate conversations, balancing honesty with discretion, and determining how much to share publicly versus privately. Even those who had previously been allies in navigating royal life found themselves negotiating new boundaries, aware that any statement could become fodder for media interpretation. This social recalibration was exhausting yet necessary, as trust became an even more precious commodity in an environment where privacy was scarce. One of the most significant shifts occurred in Harry's relationship with the broader royal family. The announcement created ripples through Buckingham Palace, prompting both formal and informal responses. Senior members were compelled to adjust expectations, reassess protocols, and manage public-facing communications with precision. Behind closed doors, conversations about co-parenting, property arrangements, and ceremonial duties became urgent and, at times, contentious. Harry's life now involved a heightened negotiation of authority, independence, and familial responsibility, highlighting the intricate interplay between personal choice and institutional obligation. Financial implications were also immediate and consequential. Legal consultations, asset divisions, and potential settlements required strategic consideration. Harry had to evaluate both short-term needs and long-term stability, ensuring that decisions regarding property, income streams, and investments were sound and protected his interests. Advisors worked around the clock, analyzing documents, financial portfolios, and precedents from previous high-profile separations to provide guidance. The legal landscape was as complex as the emotional one, demanding careful navigation to minimize risk while safeguarding personal autonomy. Amid these practical challenges, Harry confronted profound emotional and psychological realities. The end of a marriage, especially one conducted under public scrutiny, triggers a cascade of introspection, grief, and identity reassessment. Therapy and counseling became crucial components of his daily life, offering structured spaces to process emotions, strategize coping mechanisms, and reconcile the dual identities of public figure and private individual. Harry's resilience was tested, and moments of vulnerability, previously shielded from public view, emerged as critical to his healing and decision-making process. Public engagement, once routine, became fraught with complexity. Every appearance, speech, or charitable involvement was now filtered through the lens of his recent personal revelation. Public expectations oscillated between support, curiosity, and judgment, requiring Harry to carefully curate interactions to maintain dignity, purpose, and credibility. Each decision carried symbolic weight, from attending ceremonial functions to casual public engagements, as observers interpreted actions as reflective of character, intent, and emotional state. The media, far from abandoning the story, maintained a vigilant eye on developments. Paparazzi coverage intensified, interviews with insiders proliferated, and social media continued to dissect his choices. Harry's approach to media engagement evolved accordingly. Strategic communication became essential, balancing transparency with discretion. Official statements were carefully crafted, interviews meticulously prepared, and any public commentary weighed for potential impact. The constant scrutiny demanded not only tactical acumen, but also emotional fortitude, as Harry navigated a world where every word could be amplified and every gesture interpreted. Family life, particularly parenting, became a central concern. Decisions regarding time with children, co-parenting arrangements, and emotional support required negotiation, empathy, and careful planning. Harry's role as a father took precedence, serving as both anchor and compass amid upheaval. Conversations with co-parents involved sensitivity, consistency, and prioritization of the children's emotional well-being, highlighting the human dimension often overshadowed by public spectacle. In private, these moments revealed Harry's devotion, patience, and willingness to adapt, even as external pressures mounted. Social perception also played a critical role in shaping Harry's post-announcement life. Public opinion polls, social media sentiment analysis, and feedback from constituents of charitable causes influenced both perception and decision-making. Maintaining a positive public image was no longer simply about royal duties or personal achievements. It now involved demonstrating resilience, accountability, and emotional intelligence in the face of deeply personal upheaval. The intersection of private pain and public expectation became an ongoing challenge, demanding careful navigation and thoughtful engagement. Amid all these pressures, Harry sought avenues for personal growth and redirection. Charitable work, public speaking, and advocacy offered outlets to channel energy constructively. Projects emphasizing mental health, veterans support, and youth empowerment provided purpose, community connection, and professional focus. Through these initiatives, Harry was able to redefine elements of identity, demonstrating adaptability and commitment despite the turbulence in his personal life. Coping mechanisms extended beyond professional and charitable engagement. Physical activity, travel, and moments of solitude became vital to emotional equilibrium. Exercise routines, private retreats, and structured downtime allowed Harry to process events, restore perspective, and maintain resilience. These practices, while less visible to the public, were critical in sustaining the stamina required to navigate a life simultaneously public, scrutinized, and profoundly personal. As months progressed, patterns began to emerge in Harry's post-announcement life. He gradually reclaimed agency over personal and professional decisions, establishing routines, boundaries, and priorities that reflected newfound independence. While challenges persisted, there was a deliberate effort to foster stability, nurture relationships, and pursue meaningful engagement. Each choice reflected a balance between personal needs and public responsibilities, illustrating the ongoing negotiation required when personal transformation intersects with global visibility. Ultimately, this aftermath period exemplified the complexity of living a life intertwined with public fascination. Harry's announcement marked the end of one chapter, but it also catalyzed the beginning of another, an intricate journey of self-discovery, public engagement, and strategic navigation of media, family, and personal priorities. The interplay of emotional resilience, practical decision-making, and public perception defined this phase, offering insights into both the human and institutional dimensions of high-profile life transformations. Harry's post-announcement life became a testament to adaptability, courage, and the ongoing pursuit of authenticity amid scrutiny. Each decision, interaction, and reflection contributed to a layered narrative of personal evolution, highlighting the intricate dynamics of human experience under extraordinary circumstances. The aftermath was not merely a consequence of choice. It was a complex, evolving story of resilience, strategy, and emotional navigation in the public eye, setting the stage for subsequent chapters of revelation, challenge, and transformation. The announcement of Prince Harry's divorce from Meghan Markle marked not only a turning point in his personal life, but also a seismic shift in the public's perception of the royal family. The story, as it unfolded over weeks and months, had been filled with emotional intensity, strategic maneuvers, and deeply personal reckonings. Now, as the dust settled, it was time to reflect on what this moment meant, not just for Harry, but for everyone watching closely from across the United Kingdom and around the world. In the aftermath of the divorce announcement, Harry demonstrated a profound capacity for reflection and growth. This was not a story about endings alone. It was a narrative about transformation, about the deliberate choices one makes when confronted with the intersection of personal desire and public expectation. The emotional weight he carried was immense, yet he navigated it with a combination of courage, introspection, and resilience that few could truly appreciate from the outside. He learned that vulnerability and honesty, even when publicly exposed, could coexist with strength and dignity. Family dynamics continued to play a central role in this period. Conversations with his parents, siblings, and extended relatives were now guided by new parameters of respect, distance, and responsibility. Co-parenting became a delicate balance, requiring empathy, negotiation, and mutual commitment to the well-being of the children involved. These interactions revealed the human side of a public figure often portrayed through headlines and commentary. It became clear that even royals, despite wealth, status, and influence, confront deeply personal challenges in ways that mirror those of ordinary people, albeit under the scrutiny of millions. Public perception, too, evolved. Initial shock gave way to nuanced discussions about agency, personal happiness, and the pressures of life in the royal spotlight. Supporters lauded Harry for taking control of his narrative, while critics continued to debate his choices. Social media platforms became arenas for conversation, reflection, and debate, demonstrating how interconnected modern public life is with personal decisions. Every appearance, statement, and action was interpreted through layers of expectation, assumption, and cultural context, illustrating the complex dance between public persona and private reality. Financial and logistical considerations remained significant. Legal settlements, property arrangements, and strategic planning for the future demanded ongoing attention. Advisors worked closely with Harry to ensure long-term stability, allowing him to focus on personal growth, charitable endeavors, and public duties where appropriate. These decisions were not merely transactional. They represented a reclamation of autonomy and a reassertion of control over a life previously defined in part by external pressures and obligations. One of the most striking elements of this period was Harry's commitment to self-discovery. Freed, in some ways, from the constraints of a partnership that no longer served his personal growth, he explored avenues for creativity, advocacy, and public engagement that resonated with his evolving identity. His involvement in charitable work deepened, with projects emphasizing mental health, veteran support, and youth empowerment reflecting both personal passion and strategic vision. These initiatives became channels through which Harry could express authenticity, purpose, and leadership outside of traditional royal structures. The emotional journey was, of course, far from linear. Moments of grief, doubt, and introspection interwove with experiences of clarity, determination, and empowerment. Therapy and counseling remained essential components of daily life, helping Harry navigate the complexities of high-profile separation, co-parenting responsibilities, and the lingering effects of public scrutiny. Emotional resilience became both a tool and a symbol, a demonstration that strength and vulnerability could coexist in the face of extraordinary life changes. Relationships outside the family sphere also transformed. Friends and allies adjusted their roles, offering support, counsel, and perspective while respecting new boundaries. Public interactions with media representatives became more calculated, with an understanding that strategic communication was essential to both protecting personal privacy and shaping public narrative. Harry learned to navigate these dynamics with increasing sophistication, balancing openness with discretion and advocacy with diplomacy. The broader implications of this divorce announcement extended beyond the personal realm. It prompted widespread reflection on issues of autonomy, personal choice, and the pressures inherent in roles shaped by tradition and expectation. Viewers, commentators, and analysts alike examined the story not simply as royal gossip, but as a case study in modern life, relationships, and the negotiation between personal happiness and public duty. Harry's journey became a touchstone for discussion on mental health, resilience, and the courage required to embrace change in the face of intense scrutiny. As Harry moved forward, he continued to rebuild a life aligned with his values, passions, and aspirations. New routines, projects, and relationships reflected lessons learned and priorities clarified. While challenges remained, legal matters, public expectations, and the ongoing dynamics of co-parenting, the narrative shifted from crisis to growth, from upheaval to reconstruction. Every decision, every interaction, and every reflection was now part of a consciously designed life path, one in which Harry asserted agency, embraced authenticity, and navigated complexity with strategic intention. Looking back on the entire saga, it is clear that this was more than a story of divorce. It was a story of transformation. Harry's announcement catalyzed a period of intense introspection, public discussion, and personal evolution. It challenged assumptions about the royal family, marriage, and the intersections of public and private life. For Harry himself, it was a decisive moment, a choice to prioritize self-respect, personal fulfillment, and the well-being of his children above all else. The story leaves viewers with questions about identity, responsibility, and courage. How does one balance the expectations of others with the imperatives of the self? What does it mean to assert independence when surrounded by scrutiny? How can resilience be cultivated amidst emotional, social, and public pressures? These are the enduring questions prompted by Harry's decision, and they resonate far beyond palace walls, inviting reflection and dialogue among audiences worldwide. In conclusion, the announcement of Prince Harry's divorce from Meghan Markle serves as a profound narrative about human complexity, emotional courage, and the intricate interplay between personal choice and public life. It is a story of endings and beginnings, of loss and reclamation, of visibility and vulnerability. The journey is ongoing, but the lessons are already evident. The pursuit of authenticity, the assertion of agency, and the navigation of life's most challenging decisions require both bravery and introspection. As the story closes on this chapter, viewers are left to ponder the ripple effects of this historic decision. It is a reminder that even in lives shaped by privilege and public attention, the struggles, triumphs, and choices are deeply human. It is also a call to empathy, reflection, and engagement, encouraging audiences to consider how personal courage and resilience can redefine the trajectory of one's life, regardless of circumstance. What do you think? How would you have navigated such profound personal upheaval under the gaze of the world? Share your thoughts, reflect on the journey, and consider the lessons that resonate in your own life. The story of Prince Harry's decision is more than a headline. It is a lens through which we can examine resilience, agency, and the